Hello, everybody. Did Little Rod's lawsuit get dismissed? Because that is what the streets are saying. Well, the answer to the question is kinda, but no, it did not. So let me show you what I mean. So, Little Rod Jones is the person who, really, other than Cassie, honestly kicked this whole thing off against Diddy, if you ask me. At first, of course, for years, people were suing Diddy. Of course, for years, people were making allegations about Diddy and towards Diddy, namely, I mean, Wendy Williams comes to mind, but basically people really didn't take those allegations seriously. By people, I mean just, the general consensus, the consensus of the general public just did not take these allegations very seriously. But then that all started to change back in December 2023, whenever Cassie, Diddy's longtime girlfriend, did sue Diddy. She made a bunch of really egregious allegations against Diddy. Namely, we learned about these FOs. She called them, freak offs. And then just a few months later, so that was in December 2023. In February, like 2 or 3 months later, 2024, we had someone else sue Diddy that people did take pretty seriously. Now, I mean, not everybody, but of course, it was like more people were taking it seriously than before. And this was Lil Rod, aka Rodney Jones. Rodney Jones is a music producer, and he claims to have worked on the Love album Off the Grid. He sued Diddy all the way, like I said, back in February 2024, over a year ago. Well, time went on. Time went on in this case. As you can see, things were filed, and some things that were filed were amendments to this complaint. Lil Rod removed some of the original defendants he was suing, and then he added some new defendants. In the beginning, he was suing like Motown Records and Ethiopia Had to Marry Him. I think he ended up dropping her. Then at some point, maybe it was very early on, I don't even exactly remember. You could probably pause and look through here and see when it was. But at some point, Justin Combs and Cuba Gooding Jr. were added to this lawsuit as defendants. And then, of course, as you know, if you've pretty much ever heard of lawsuits ever, in order to get sued, in order for the lawsuit to actually take effect and to actually be valid, the person you're suing has to know. The person you're suing has to know they're being sued. And it's your responsibility. It's the plaintiff's responsibility to let the person know they're getting sued. And in the American legal system, in these civil cases like this, where it's a private party suing another private party, it's not like the government or the feds, right? It's like Lil Rod Jones suing Diddy. So in these cases, there's very specific notice requirements. There's laws, there's rules. It's like agreed upon. It's already been agreed upon. There's certain ways that you have to give service. There's certain ways you have to let people know that you're suing them. I'll give you an example. Remember that guy, Derek Lee Cardello Smith, who got $100 million judgment against Diddy by default because Diddy never responded to the lawsuit or whatever? Well, come to find out, that $100 million judgment got overturned. It got vacated. It got, taken away. I don't exactly remember the exact legal mechanism, but it got overturned. It got taken away. There's no more $100 million judgment. The reason is because exactly this. The judge determined that Derek Lee Cardello Smith did not sufficiently notify Diddy that he was trying to sue him. So you do have problems come up. And this is where Lil Rod Jones and Tyrone Blackburn made a mistake. Yesterday, right in the middle of the second day of jury selection for Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs, we did get a filing on the books in the Lil Rod Jones lawsuit. And I believe this filing is what has people out here saying that the Lil Rod Jones lawsuit has been dismissed, but has not been fully dismissed as to against Diddy. As you can see, the most recent filing was yesterday, May 6th, 2025. But if you look one line above that, all the way a month before that, pretty much on April 8th, 2025, there was a motion filed. What was this motion? It was motion to get permission from the judge for him, Paul Oetken, the judge is Paul Oetken, for him to allow Lil Rod Jones and his lawyer, Tyrone Blackburn, to send notice of this lawsuit to Justin Combs and Cuba Gooding Jr. Now, what it was kind of presented as by Tyrone Blackburn is like Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs are just so incredibly difficult to reach, to get in contact with, to get in touch with, that the only way, Your Honor, this is what Tyrone Blackburn and Lil Rod were arguing, the only way we're going to be able to serve them, Your Honor, is if you allow us to just post notice of the lawsuit in the New York Times or whatever, some periodical. Well, that again, like I said, was filed a month ago, and attached to the filing, Tyrone Blackburn did attach his affidavit and some exhibits, and his exhibits are purportedly supposed to be proof that he really did try to serve this stuff. Well, of course, I did download the document that the order that the judge put out yesterday, and I want to pull that up for y'all right now so that we can get to the bottom of what exactly got dismissed. Now, while I'm pulling this up, I do also want to remind y'all that parts of this lawsuit have already been dismissed. So the original version of this lawsuit already has not survived, other than it being amended. The RICO charge, the organized crime racketeering charge on the Lil Rod lawsuit, has been dismissed. Okay, so that had already happened. Already made a video about that, already covered that before. But what we're about to talk about is something entirely different. I thought we could just read through the order here so that y'all can get the actual truth about what actually happened. I know that's like a hard commodity to come by on the internet, but here's the order right here. It's 4 pages long, and it's written by the judge. The judge says, in my order from March, over a month ago, I directed Rodney Jones to file a letter explaining the status of service of process on Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs. Okay, so the judge's like, I asked them to explain themselves like quite a while ago. Previously, the court had granted Lil Rod Jones a request for an extension of time to serve Cuba Gooding Jr. and Combs. And it says that the court had set a deadline of November 8th, 2024. Lil Rod Jones missed the deadline without effectuating service or requesting an additional extension. Okay, so strike one, basically. The judge is laying out for us what exactly he took into consideration. One of the things he took into consideration, he lays it out right here in the first paragraph. First of all, November 28th, 2024 was already an extended deadline, buddy. Strike one, already gave you an extension and you did not file anything by that extension. Strike 1.5 / strike two is the fact that you didn't ask for another extension. You just let it sit there. And then Jones, which honestly, I don't know that Lil Rod Jones, bless his heart, I don't know that he has anything to do with this. Okay. It's like the lawyers do that. So it kind of sucks, honestly, that the client is getting blamed for the lawyer's actions. But that being said, I really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It might be Lil Rod Jones was directing all of this, but I truly highly doubt it. The order goes on to say now Lil Rod Jones is trying to ask the court to allow him alternative service of Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs by means of publication in 2 newspapers. So now y'all want to do it in a newspaper. Remember, it was April that got filed. In support of that motion, trying to file it in the newspaper for notice, Lil Rod Jones filed on April 8th a proposed order, a memo, an affidavit from Tyrone Blackburn, and some documentation, which is evincing unsuccessful attempts to serve Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs through traditional means. So in this April 8th, 2025 package of documents that Lil Rod Jones and Tyrone Blackburn did file with the court, they filed a bunch of stuff: a memo, a proposed order, an affidavit from Tyrone Blackburn, and some receipts that they had tried to serve Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs. The court lays out the rules. He says the Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 4E dictates how a person within the United States must be served with, a lawsuit. May be made by following state law for serving a summons in an action brought in courts of general jurisdiction pursuant to the New York Civil Practice Law. If service cannot be made under those methods with due diligence, then nail and mail service is authorized, but only if service is impracticable under the 3 previous methods. So there's like a funnel, there's like a hierarchy of ways that you are supposed to serve someone. All this is based on the interest of justice and reasonableness. So first and foremost, just out the gate, you have to personally serve someone. If it becomes so impossible to do that, then these other avenues open up, but you have to take them in turn and you have to actually show due diligence. You have to do basically every single thing possible. You have to really show to the judge, these are all the things I tried to do. Not like, oh, I sent somebody over there at 1 a.m. and they knocked real soft and then they ran away. Like, no, you have to actually really show that you really tried to serve the person. Regarding Cuba Gooding Jr., Tyrone Blackburn provides documentation of attempts to serve him at 3 addresses in California. Tyrone Blackburn sent a process server to the 3rd address only after the deadline had already passed. And remember, the November 8th deadline was already an extension, stating that the process server received the summons from Blackburn on November 10th, despite previously claiming that he attempted to serve Cuba Gooding Jr. in New York. Then Blackburn doesn't give me any receipts that he actually did that. So he's saying it with his mouth. He's saying it with his fingers. He's typing the words, oh, I tried to serve him, but he didn't give me any receipts. So I can't just take his word on it, unfortunately, is what the judge is saying. Blackburn also did not attempt to serve Cuba Gooding Jr. in Florida, despite acknowledging that similar attempts were successful in other cases. So another strike. You didn't try to serve him in Florida. Now you just want to put it in the New York Times or whatever? No. Blackburn also does not provide evidence that nail and mail service is impracticable. I don't know what type of service that is, as it would be required. So it's required, and Blackburn doesn't do the requirement, which is to explain why it's impracticable to do the nail and mail. I don't really know what that is. I thought nail and mail was, oh yeah, leaving it at the door, nailing it on your door, and then also mailing it to you, maybe. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe that'd be one of the questions I asked my teachers, my law school teachers. Then the court, okay, so that's the Cuba Gooding Jr. section. He moves on to Justin Combs before telling us what his decision is. He says, regarding Justin Combs, Tyrone Blackburn provides a transcript of his correspondence with a process server, showing that attempts to effect service using a process server began on October 19th, 2024. But Tyrone Blackburn first provided the process server with 2 incorrect addresses. Then he provided a 3rd address at 7:46 p.m., so 7:45 at night, basically a day, giving like 1 or 2 days before the deadline, right? So it's nighttime on the 6th. So he really only has the 7th and like hopefully the 8th to try and get the thing served, because remember, it was a November 8th deadline. The process server did attempt to serve the next day and confirm that the subject resides at the address, but he was unable to access the address due to private gate fence. That afternoon, which is the day before the deadline, Blackburn correctly instructed the process server to leave the summons and the complaint with a security guard at the property. However, despite Blackburn's instructions, the process server later responded that day, service to the security guard will not be accepted by your court. Blackburn didn't respond that day. Okay, so we have the process server coming out and trying to act like he's a lawyer or she's a lawyer. The lawyer said, all right, look, we got to get this served by tomorrow. So can you just leave it with the security guard at the very least? And the process server was like, nah, the court's not going to accept that. And Tyrone Blackburn basically just didn't respond. The process server again attempted service the next day, but did not leave the papers with Justin Combs' security guard. The process server did inform Blackburn. Okay, so it wasn't like, oh, Blackburn's out here and said, hey, leave it with the security guard. And then the guy just didn't follow his instructions. The guy said it. I'm not leaving it with the security guard. But Tyrone Blackburn, despite the November 8th deadline, did not respond back until the next day, 3:45 p.m., after the deadline, right? So the deadline's on the 8th. He didn't respond back till the 9th. At that time, he reiterated that the service could be made by leaving the summons and the complaint with the security guard. So Tyrone Blackburn reiterates, leave it with the security guard, but the deadline has already passed. And again, this wasn't just a deadline. It was already a deadline that had been extended beyond the first deadline. He tells the process server correctly, but very late, untimely, quote, let me worry about the court rule and you worry about serving the documents. Blackburn and the process server continued to argue, and at one point, Blackburn changed the service location to the address next door without explanation. So I don't know if this is like the Star Island houses or what. It says, but the papers still were never left with a security guard or otherwise delivered to Combs' address. In sum, the judge says, for both Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs, Blackburn waited until the service deadline was imminent to make meaningful efforts to effect service, and then he failed to notify the court or request further extension when his efforts failed. The court therefore determines that plaintiff, that's Rod Jones, has not shown good cause for failing to serve Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs, and that would have been required by the rule. Accordingly, Ronnie Jones' motion to effectuate service by putting it in the newspaper is denied, and his claims against both Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs are dismissed without prejudice. The clerk of court is directed to close the motion at docket 91, terminate Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs as parties in the action. Okay, but look, without prejudice means it's not totally over. The fat lady didn't sing yet, if you know what I mean. Doesn't look like this judge is playing around. And I don't know if my other video came out already or if it's going to be coming out later, but there will be a video today about another judge in these Diddy cases. And Diddy's judge in the criminal case, Judge Aaron Subramanian. He is not playing any games with Diddy's lawyer / not lawyer, Mark Garagos. Okay. He is not playing any games with him. He busted him yesterday in court or behind closed doors. So not in court, but somehow there was a transcript of it found. Y'all go watch that video. But it looks like the judges are not putting up with this. Take that together with judges who are admonishing people on the other side of Diddy, meaning this Lil Rod Jones guy getting admonished because Tyrone Blackburn can't figure out how to serve somebody, or Busby getting admonished and perhaps even disciplined in the Southern District of New York. Judges not playing around with this, okay? They're like, don't bring this freaking circus carnival into my courtroom. So, to answer the question we asked at the very beginning of the video, is the Lil Rod lawsuit dismissed? Well, kind of, but the lawsuit is still very much alive and well as to against Diddy. Of course, as I said earlier, the RICO allegation has been dropped or dismissed, but everything else seems to be alive and well. And now we have two defendants, Cuba Gooding Jr. and Justin Combs, both dismissed, not getting sued anymore in the Lil Rod lawsuit for the reasons we just outlined, given to us by the judge. That's all I really had for this one. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Make sure you tune in today at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be going over the live jury selection process, day 3. They're saying they're expecting to have the jury seated today. So tune in for that. We may be done with jury selection today. Make sure you're following for that. Love you, Mina K. Bye.